Adam turned the key in the lock quietly, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he stepped into the darkened house. It was late, well past midnight. After 2 weeks on a business trip, he'd decided to cut his journey short, hoping to surprise Samantha with his early return. He could already picture her wide-eyed, delighted reaction. He set his bag down gently, tiptoeing through the hallway, guided only by the faint glow seeping from under their bedroom door. As he got closer, a strange sound reached his ears. Muffled laughter, a soft murmur. He froze, his heartbeat quickening. Samantha never stayed up this late, and she was rarely one to laugh in the middle of the night, especially alone. The murmurs continued, punctuated by hushed giggles, and dread began to creep over him, tightening his chest. Adam's pulse thundered as he approached the door, each step slower than the last. He leaned in, pressing his ear against the wood, but the sounds within were unmistakable now. A man's voice, low and intimate, mingling with Samantha's familiar tone. Unable to help himself, Adam reached for the doorknob, twisting it just enough to push the door open a crack. The dim light illuminated a scene that seared into his memory. Samantha in the arms of a stranger, their shared intimacy obliterating any lingering doubt. Frozen in the doorway, Adam felt his world collapse in an instant. He backed away, his movements silent but his mind screaming, carrying with him a vision that would haunt him forever. Adam stumbled out of the house, the cool night air hitting him like a slap to the face. His hands trembled as he fumbled for his car keys, desperate to escape the scene he'd just witnessed. The image of Samantha with that man replayed in his mind, vivid and haunting, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper into his chest with every passing second. Slumping into the driver's seat, he sat there, staring blankly at the steering wheel, unable to move or think clearly. He felt numb, as if his entire life had been stripped of meaning in a single instant. He started the car, the hum of the engine a strange comfort, and pulled onto the empty road, driving with no destination in mind. The streets were silent, lined with houses where families lay asleep, oblivious to the chaos raging within him. Adam drove aimlessly, his eyes unfocused, struggling to reconcile the Samantha he loved with the person he had just seen. As he drifted through the city, memories began to flood his mind. He remembered their early days, the way she laughed when he proposed at sunset on the beach, her eyes full of promises. He recalled their first apartment, their first big fight, and their whispered dreams of a future together. Every moment, every memory now felt tainted, twisted by her betrayal. How had he been so blind? A cold wave of doubt washed over him. Was this somehow his fault? Had he failed her? Adam's thoughts spiraled, questioning every choice he'd made, every moment he'd missed, every late night at work. Maybe he hadn't been enough, maybe he'd pushed her away without even realizing it. The self-blame churned in his gut, deepening his heartbreak. But as the night wore on, his guilt began to give way to anger. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white. He had given her everything, his love, his trust, his commitment, and she'd thrown it all away. The realization cut through his sorrow, filling him with a cold fury. He was no longer the devoted husband. He was a man betrayed, a man wronged, and he knew he couldn't just let it go. Adam pulled over, staring out into the darkness, his mind made up. Samantha needed to feel the weight of what she had done, to see the consequences of her actions. Adam's car idled in the darkness as he sat motionless, his hands still gripping the steering wheel with a fierce intensity. The betrayal replayed over and over in his mind, each flash of memory igniting fresh anger. Samantha's laughter, her intimate whispers with another man, sounds that once filled his life with joy had become venom, seeping into every part of his soul. He was done wallowing in self-doubt. This wasn't about his shortcomings or any flaws in their marriage. This was about her betrayal and the trust she had shattered without remorse. He deserved better, and she needed to know just how deeply she had wronged him. In the early hours of the morning, Adam found himself in front of the modest cafe where he'd spent countless hours with his best friend, Michael. He hadn't planned to go there, but his body seemed to move on its own, seeking a sanctuary, a place to make sense of the wreckage. The cafe's neon sign flickered dimly, casting a soft glow over the street. The place was empty, but Michael was there in minutes after Adam's text, his face laced with concern as he slipped into the booth across from him. Adam tried to explain, but the words felt heavy and jagged, each sentence catching in his throat. Michael sat in stunned silence as Adam recounted the scene he had witnessed, every painful detail spilling out in quiet fury. When he finished, Michael placed a steady hand on his shoulder, his voice low but firm. "She did this to you, Adam. This wasn't your fault. You gave her everything, and she betrayed you. She doesn't deserve your pain. She deserves to see what her actions have caused." Adam took a shaky breath, Michael's words grounding him, fueling a growing resolve. "I can't just let her walk away from this, Michael. I can't pretend it never happened." "You shouldn't have to," Michael replied, a glint of shared anger in his eyes. "But whatever you do, don't just lash out. Make her feel it in a way she'll never forget." Adam's grip on the coffee cup tightened. He could feel a plan beginning to take shape in his mind, one that would ensure Samantha fully understood the devastation she had unleashed. He wanted to show her what true betrayal looked like, to mirror her actions back at her in a way she would never recover from. The two friends stayed there until dawn, discussing ideas, weighing options. With each passing minute, Adam's vision grew clearer. It wasn't enough for Samantha to face her actions privately. She needed to be unmasked in front of everyone who believed in her, a moment that would strip away the lies and leave her exposed, just as she had left him. By the time Adam left the cafe, the morning light was spilling onto the street. His heartbreak was still there, a dull ache beneath his newfound resolve, but for the first time since he had walked in on Samantha's betrayal, he felt a sliver of control. He was no longer a victim of her deceit. He was now the architect of a plan that would show Samantha the true cost of betrayal. With the morning sun casting a harsh, revealing light over everything, Adam returned home with newfound resolve. This wasn't just about making Samantha understand his pain. This was about exposing her for who she truly was. He wanted evidence, irrefutable proof of her betrayal, something she couldn't talk her way out of, and something that would leave her no escape. For days, Adam played the role of the oblivious husband. Each morning he greeted Samantha as usual, watching her go through her routines with a facade so polished it almost hurt to witness. He kept his tone light and his demeanor calm, a mask carefully maintained as he observed her every move. And every time she lied, about her plans for the day or the reason she needed to stay out late, he felt his anger simmering beneath the surface. One night, after she claimed she had a girls' night planned, Adam pretended to be unfazed and let her leave without question. The moment she was out the door, he sprang into action, his hand steady as he took the next step. He installed a tracking app on her phone, syncing it with his. It felt invasive, but this was a betrayal that demanded drastic measures. This was his life, his trust she had broken, and he needed every piece of evidence to make her feel the weight of her actions. The first few nights, Adam's tracker didn't show much. Samantha would be out for hours, often at a bar or some upscale restaurant, but nothing confirmed her affair. However, one Saturday evening, the app showed her location at an unfamiliar hotel across town, a place they had never been together. Adam's heart pounded as he followed the blinking dot on his screen, his mind reeling with what he might find. He drove to the hotel, parking his car discreetly across the street, and waited. An hour later, he spotted Samantha exiting the hotel with a man, Greg. His heart sank, yet he felt a strange sense of validation, his worst suspicions confirmed. He watched them laugh together, oblivious to everything but each other. Every stolen glance, every touch deepened his resolve. The woman he had loved and trusted had chosen a double life over honesty, and that decision would now cost her everything. Returning home that night, Adam's mind raced with the possibilities, but he needed more. He wanted indisputable evidence that he could reveal in a way that would make her lies collapse around her, publicly and permanently. The following morning, Adam made the next move. He contacted a private investigator, Jake, someone recommended by Michael. Adam was direct, his voice steady as he outlined his request. He wanted proof, photos, text messages, anything that could document the extent of Samantha's betrayal. Jake, understanding the gravity of the situation, agreed without hesitation, promising to keep everything discreet. In the days that followed, Adam waited patiently, acting as if nothing was wrong. Samantha continued her routine of deceit, seemingly unbothered and unknowing. She occasionally glanced at him with what he once thought was affection, but now it felt hollow, almost mocking. The tension gnawed at him, but he knew he couldn't act until he had everything he needed. Every moment of pretense, every forced smile, was a painful reminder of her betrayal, but he held it together, focusing on the end goal. After a week, Jake contacted him with the results. The investigator provided Adam with a small package discreetly handed over in a coffee shop where they met. Inside were photographs of Samantha and Greg at various locations: a hotel lobby, a restaurant, a bar, and, most damningly, a collection of text messages Jake had managed to retrieve from Samantha's phone. The messages were filled with words Adam could hardly stomach: intimate conversations, shared secrets, and plans for the future. Adam sat in his car reading the messages, the photographs clutched in his hands. His heart hammered with anger, but he also felt an eerie calm. He had everything he needed. Now he could execute the plan he had envisioned, one that would bring her lies into the light for everyone to see. She would experience the same heartbreak and humiliation he had felt, and there would be no way for her to escape it. With evidence in hand, Adam left the cafe feeling a strange, bittersweet sense of relief. Samantha's betrayal was no longer his burden alone. Soon it would be a truth everyone would know, and she would be forced to face the consequences of the life she had chosen. The evidence weighed heavily on Adam's mind, a collection of proof that he carried like a hidden weapon. Yet he knew he couldn't strike just yet. Timing was everything. He wanted Samantha to feel secure in her web of lies, to believe she'd gotten away with her deception. The thought alone made his chest tighten with a mix of dread and anticipation, but he held his resolve. She would never see this coming. Every morning, Adam maintained the role of the oblivious, loving husband, greeting Samantha with a steady voice and a calm demeanor, concealing the storm brewing inside him. Each good morning and have a nice day felt like a betrayal of his own, but he knew he had to keep the mask on just a little longer. As she moved through their home, laughing, chatting, acting as though everything were perfectly normal, Adam's mind replayed the evidence. Every photo, every line of text he'd read echoed in his mind, filling each mundane moment with unbearable tension. One night, as they sat at the dinner table, Adam forced himself to meet her eyes. She was chatting about her day, laughing lightly, describing an imaginary girls' night she had planned for the weekend. Her face was serene, her tone warm, as if she were truly the devoted wife she pretended to be. Adam felt his grip tighten around his fork, his knuckles white. The lies came so easily to her, like a practiced dance. He watched her, searching her expression for a flicker of guilt or remorse, but there was nothing. Her facade was impenetrable, and that made his anger burn even hotter. As she continued her story, Adam found himself drifting into his own thoughts, barely hearing her words. He was already envisioning the moment when her deception would unravel in front of everyone she held dear. He imagined the look on her face when the world she had crafted came crashing down, and for a brief second, he felt a pang of guilt, but it was fleeting. He reminded himself that this was her doing, her choice to betray him. She had turned their marriage into a performance, and he was simply giving her the final act. In the quiet of the night, long after Samantha had gone to bed, Adam sat alone in their living room, staring at the folder Jake had given him. His mind was flooded with memories of their life together. Their first apartment, their shared dreams, the promises they'd made. He felt a pang of loss, not just for her but for the life they had built. It felt as though he was grieving the death of someone he loved, even though she was right upstairs, sleeping peacefully. He thought about the friends and family who had believed in them, who had celebrated their love and supported their marriage. They deserved to know the truth as much as he did. He could imagine their shock, their hurt, their disbelief, and as painful as it would be, he knew he had to follow through. In the days leading up to his planned reveal, Adam endured countless small agonies. Every time Samantha kissed him goodbye, every time she laughed at one of his jokes, every time she casually texted him as though everything were fine, it took all of his strength not to confront her then and there. His phone would buzz with messages from her, little texts that once would have made him smile, but now only fueled his determination. Late one evening, after Samantha had left for yet another work meeting, he received a message from her, a simple, "I love you, see you later." The words felt hollow, a slap in the face. He typed a response, his fingers moving robotically as he replied with a simple, "I love you too," the irony twisting in his chest. It was his final goodbye to the woman he thought he knew. The waiting became almost unbearable, but with each passing day, he felt his resolve hardening. He wasn't just planning revenge, he was planning liberation from a life built on lies. The pain that once clouded his mind had become a laser focus. Every detail of his plan etched into his thoughts. Finally, the day arrived. The house was decorated, friends and family were invited, and Samantha was blissfully unaware, thinking it was a surprise anniversary celebration he had organized to honor their marriage. Adam watched her that morning as she happily prepared, picking out a dress and rehearsing her gratitude for the surprise she assumed he'd planned for her. He forced himself to smile, to act as though he were just as excited, but inside, he was steeling himself for what was to come. Today, Samantha's carefully woven world would come undone, and he would be there, calm and resolute, as she faced the reality she had tried so hard to hide. The painful wait was over. It was time for the truth. The evening had arrived, and Adam could feel his pulse pounding in his temples as he watched guests trickle into the venue. Family, friends, colleagues, and close acquaintances, all people who had celebrated his marriage to Samantha and witnessed the life they had built together, filled the room with warm smiles and laughter, oblivious to the storm about to unfold. Adam maintained his calm, polite smile, greeting everyone who came to congratulate him on what they thought was a surprise anniversary celebration. His heart clenched each time someone praised their perfect marriage or toasted to their everlasting love, but he kept his composure, reminding himself that this night was for them as much as it was for him. Tonight, the truth would come out and everyone would see Samantha for who she truly was. Samantha entered the room, radiant in the dress she'd chosen, her face glowing with happiness as she took in the decorations, the guests, and the love that surrounded her. She turned to Adam, her eyes sparkling, a smile that was meant to show gratitude, but that now looked painfully false to him. She wrapped her arms around him, whispering, "I can't believe you did all this. You're amazing." He forced a smile, his stomach twisting with a blend of anticipation and sorrow. "Anything for you," he replied softly, the words laced with irony only he understood. After mingling for a while, Adam felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. It was time. He cleared his throat, catching the attention of the guests, and raised a glass, calling for everyone's attention. The room fell silent, all eyes on him as he prepared to give the speech they expected to be filled with love and admiration. But Adam had something very different in mind. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady but carrying an edge of emotion that held everyone's attention. "Tonight is not just a celebration of an anniversary. It's a moment of honesty, of truth. I've been blessed with love, with a partner who I thought was my soulmate, someone who I believed would stand by me through anything. But sometimes we're forced to see the truth in the most painful ways." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension in his words. Samantha's smile faltered, confusion flickering across her face as she looked at him, perhaps starting to sense that this wasn't the speech she had anticipated. Adam took a deep breath and signaled to the AV team. "I'd like to share some memories with all of you," he said, glancing around the room, his gaze hardening as he looked back at Samantha. She was still smiling, but he could see the faintest hint of anxiety creeping into her expression. The screen lit up, and a slideshow began, displaying pictures of Adam and Samantha together, vacations, family gatherings, milestone moments in their marriage. The guests smiled, murmuring fondly as they watched the seemingly happy memories flash before them. Samantha relaxed, her face returning to the picture of confidence as she soaked up the admiration. But suddenly, the pictures shifted. The happy moments disappeared, replaced by images of Samantha at a hotel, hand in hand with Greg, her secret lover. The room fell into shocked silence, and gasps rippled through the crowd. Samantha's face went pale as the images continued, each one more incriminating than the last. The photographs weren't enough to capture the full scope of her betrayal, so Adam had included snippets of the text messages projected on the screen for everyone to see. Words of intimacy and plans for a future together filled the screen, each message a dagger twisting in the hearts of everyone who had believed in their marriage. Samantha stumbled forward, her hands covering her mouth, her face flushed with panic and shame. "Adam, please," she stammered, but he held up a hand, silencing her. "It's all here, Samantha," he said, his voice calm but filled with a cold resolve. "Every lie, every betrayal. You made choices, Samantha. Choices that you tried to hide from me and everyone in this room. But tonight you face the consequences. The guests were frozen, some staring at the screen in disbelief, others looking at Samantha with disgust. Her parents, seated in the front row, looked as if they'd been struck by lightning, their faces pale, unable to process what they were seeing. Friends exchanged shocked whispers, shaking their heads as if to wake themselves from a nightmare. Greg, who had been invited anonymously, was also there, and he made a move to leave the room, his face flushed with embarrassment. But Adam's friends and family blocked the exit, and he was forced to remain, his guilt on full display for everyone to witness. Samantha turned to Adam, her voice breaking as she tried to explain. "Adam, I didn't mean... Please, it's not what it looks like. I was going to end it." Adam looked at her. His expression hardened. "Not what it looks like? It's exactly what it looks like, Samantha. You betrayed me, betrayed our life together, and you thought you could get away with it." His voice softened, a hint of sadness slipping through. "I loved you. I would have given anything for you. And this is how you repay me?" Samantha fell silent, her face streaked with tears, her gaze darting around the room as she realized the depth of her exposure. There was nowhere left to hide, no more lies to protect her from the judgment of those around her. The friends who had supported their marriage, the family who had adored her, all of them were seeing her for who she truly was. Adam took a breath, his voice trembling slightly as he addressed the room. "I needed all of you here tonight because you were part of our life, of what I thought was our love story. But this isn't a love story anymore. This is a story of betrayal, one I can no longer carry alone." With that, he lowered the microphone, the room hanging in stunned silence, the weight of the truth settling over everyone present. The truth was out, and Samantha was left to face it, exposed and alone. Adam turned and walked out of the venue, leaving Samantha in the ruins of her own deception. He could hear murmurs, the shock and the disgusted whispers echoing behind him as he stepped into the night, finally free from the lies that had bound him. For the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. Adam left the venue, breathing in the cold night air, feeling a strange sense of liberation. For weeks he had carried the weight of Samantha's betrayal alone, pretending, masking his anger and heartbreak. But now everything was laid bare. The truth had shattered the illusion, and he was free from the web of lies she had spun around him. Yet, as he walked away, the echoes of the chaos he had left behind, friends and family murmuring Samantha's sobs, lingered in his mind. He didn't get far before he heard the hurried click of heels on the pavement. Turning, he saw Samantha stumbling out of the building, her face streaked with tears, mascara smudged, her expression a mixture of desperation and remorse. Her carefully crafted facade was gone. She was raw, exposed, struggling to hold herself together. "Adam!" she called, her voice cracking. She reached out, but he took a step back, maintaining his distance. "Please, just let me explain. You have to understand. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Adam's jaw tightened, the cold fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. "Explain?" he said, his voice low and steady. "What could you possibly say that would make any of this make sense? You lied to me, Samantha. You lied to everyone." She swallowed hard, searching for words. I was lonely, Adam. You were always busy with work, and I thought maybe you didn't love me anymore. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But it didn't mean anything." He shook his head, incredulous. "Didn't mean anything? Those weren't just moments, Samantha. You built a whole other life behind my back, a life you thought I would never see, and all while you told me you loved me." Samantha's face crumpled, and she took a step closer, desperation flickering in her eyes. "Please, Adam, I know I hurt you, but I can fix this. We can fix this. Just don't throw away everything we had. Please give me another chance." The pain that had softened in the heat of his anger now surged forward, raw and undeniable. He had loved her so deeply, trusted her so completely, and now, here she was, pleading for mercy, as though her actions hadn't shattered him. Adam took a shaky breath, his gaze locked onto hers. "What we had is gone, Samantha. You destroyed it the moment you chose someone else. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed our entire life together." Her face twisted in anguish, and she clasped her hands together as if praying for forgiveness. "I was wrong, Adam. I know that now. I would do anything to take it back." Adam's voice softened, but his resolve remained firm. "Taking it back won't change what you did. It won't erase the lies or the nights you spent with him while I was at home believing in us. He paused, his voice barely a whisper. "There's nothing left to fix, Samantha." A sob escaped her, and she fell silent, realizing the finality of his words. He saw the panic in her eyes as the reality set in. She had lost him, lost everything they had built. She was truly alone in this, standing in the ruins of her own choices. For a moment, an ache pulled at Adam's heart. This was the woman he had once adored, the person he had shared his dreams and fears with. But as he looked at her now, he saw only a stranger, someone who had deceived him so thoroughly that he couldn't imagine ever trusting her again. "Goodbye, Samantha," he said quietly, his voice resolute. He turned away, each step taking him further from the pain, from the lies, from the betrayal that had consumed him. "Adam, please," she cried out, her voice broken. But he didn't turn back. He didn't falter. His decision was final, a step toward reclaiming his life from the ashes of what they had been. As he walked into the night, Adam felt a strange peace settle over him. He had done what he needed to do, had faced the truth, and had let go of a love that no longer existed. Samantha's pleas faded into the distance, and for the first time since discovering her betrayal, he felt free. Free from deception, free from hurt, and free to rebuild a life he could truly believe in. Days turned into weeks, and the shockwaves of that night began to settle, though the memories lingered like faint scars on Adam's heart. His life, once carefully woven around Samantha, felt empty at first, like a home that had lost its warmth. But gradually, a strange sense of calm began to replace the turbulence inside him. It was the calm that came with acceptance that his life had irrevocably changed, and that he now had the freedom to rebuild it on his own terms. Adam found himself diving into activities he'd long neglected. Early morning runs became his solace, the rhythm of his footsteps a steadying beat as he pounded down quiet streets, feeling his lungs burn and his heartbeat steady. With each step, he felt a little stronger, a little more in control. It was as if he were shedding pieces of his old life, each mile a step away from the betrayal, each breath a reminder that he was more resilient than he ever knew. In his career, he poured himself into projects that reignited his passion for architecture. Work had once been something he did to provide for a future he'd envisioned with Samantha. Now, it became his sanctuary, a place where he could lose himself in blueprints and designs, shaping something new from scratch, something that was entirely his. He found satisfaction in his work, a sense of purpose that wasn't tethered to anyone else's expectations. But it was the quiet moments alone that were the hardest. In the stillness of his apartment, memories of Samantha would resurface unexpectedly. A shared laugh, a whispered promise, a fleeting touch. They haunted him at first, sharp reminders of what he had lost, of the love he had given so freely and the trust that had been shattered. And on one particularly sleepless night, Adam found himself scrolling through his phone, stumbling upon a saved album of photos from their last vacation. He paused, looking at the images of them laughing on the beach, arms around each other, seemingly inseparable. He felt a pang, but it was no longer the searing pain he'd once felt. Instead, it was a gentle ache, a reminder of a chapter that had ended. Gently, he tapped the delete button, watching as each image disappeared from his screen. He wasn't erasing his past, he was simply making room for something new. For the first time, he felt ready to let go. Adam's friends noticed the change in him too. Michael, who had been his unwavering support through the darkest moments, invited him out more often, encouraging him to reconnect with old friends, to experience life again beyond the confines of betrayal. Slowly, Adam began to open up, sharing parts of his journey, his hurt, and the strength he had discovered within himself. One evening, after a quiet dinner with friends, Michael pulled him aside. "You know, Adam, I've never seen you so grounded," he said, his tone sincere. "You went through hell, but you're coming out of it stronger." Adam smiled, a warmth spreading in his chest. He hadn't realized it himself, but he could feel the truth in Michael's words. The pain had been brutal, but it hadn't broken him. If anything, it had shaped him, chiseling away the parts of him that had once been dependent on someone else for happiness. In time, he even found himself open to the idea of meeting someone new. It wasn't something he actively pursued, but he no longer felt the fear of vulnerability that had gripped him after Samantha's betrayal. He realized that trust wasn't something he had lost forever. It was something he would give again, cautiously, but willingly, when the time was right. One weekend he signed up for a community art class, something he'd always wanted to try but had never made time for. There, he met Emily, a fellow artist with a warmth and humor that was both refreshing and comforting. They bonded over their shared love for creativity, laughing over paint-splattered hands and half-finished projects. Emily was different. She didn't pry into his past or try to fill the empty spaces left by Samantha. Instead, she enjoyed the present, sharing simple, genuine moments with him. Adam found himself smiling more, laughing without restraint, and feeling, for the first time in a long while, that he could trust himself to open up again. The months continued to pass, and with each new day the shadows of his past grew fainter. Adam had moved forward not because he had forgotten the hurt, but because he had embraced it, letting it shape him without letting it define him. Standing by his apartment window one evening, he looked out at the city lights, feeling the weight of everything he'd been through. He felt gratitude, not for the betrayal, but for the strength he had gained from surviving it. He was no longer just a man who had been wronged. He was someone who had faced the darkest moments of his life and come out stronger, ready for whatever the future held. And as he closed his eyes, breathing in the quiet peace that filled his home, Adam knew he had found his way back to himself. He was whole again, and this time, he was unbreakable. As time flowed on, the final pieces of Adam's journey fell into place. He no longer thought about Samantha with bitterness. Instead, she was a faint memory, a closed chapter that had once shaped him but no longer defined him. His life had taken on a new, steady rhythm, one that brought him peace and fulfillment. One crisp autumn afternoon, Adam found himself sitting at a small cafe he'd discovered near his art class. The cozy atmosphere, with the gentle hum of conversation and the rich aroma of coffee, felt comforting, like a quiet sanctuary he could slip into after a long week. He sipped his drink, glancing out the window at the golden leaves swirling down the street. A quiet smile touched his lips. He hadn't felt this content in years. As he looked around, he saw Emily walk in, her eyes lighting up as they met his. They had been meeting up casually, sharing art classes and weekend hikes, never rushing into anything but enjoying each other's company in a way that felt natural and easy. She walked over, carrying her coffee and a sketchbook under her arm, her cheeks flushed from the cool air outside. "Mind if I join?" she asked with a warm smile, pulling up a chair without waiting for a reply. He chuckled, nodding as she sat down. They spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing. Art, their favorite childhood memories, the little things they looked forward to each day. With Emily, conversations flowed effortlessly, without the weight of expectations or hidden agendas. She laughed at his jokes, shared stories that made her eyes crinkle at the corners, and listened with genuine interest, never pushing him to reveal more than he was comfortable with. For the first time in a long time, Adam felt something new, a quiet hope, a gentle stirring that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to let someone into his life again. It wasn't a grand revelation or a surge of passion. It was a soft, steady feeling that grew each time he was with her. As they finished their drinks, Emily pulled out her sketchbook, flipping to a page with a soft, intricate pencil drawing. "I wanted to show you this," she said, her voice shy. "It's not finished, but it's something I've been working on." The sketch was of a serene landscape, a winding path leading through a sun-dappled forest, with leaves scattered along the trail. It was a beautiful scene, but what struck Adam most was the feeling it evoked. It was a place of peace, of quiet reflection, as if someone had captured the exact moment of letting go and moving forward. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice soft with genuine admiration. "It feels hopeful." She glanced up, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment they sat in comfortable silence, sharing a look that said more than words could capture. In that quiet connection, Adam realized that he had reached a place he hadn't thought possible months ago. He felt whole, resilient, ready to embrace the new experiences life had to offer. As they left the cafe, walking side by side down the street lined with fiery red and gold leaves, Emily slipped her hand into his, her fingers curling around his in a gentle, reassuring way. Adam looked down, surprised, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he gave her hand a light squeeze, feeling warmth spread through him. They continued walking, sharing stories and laughter, their voices mingling with the crisp air. And as they strolled beneath the canopy of autumn leaves, Adam realized he had come full circle. He had faced his pain, released his anger, and found peace within himself. Now, with each step, he was building something new, something true, without the shadows of the past haunting him. The betrayal that had once felt like the end of his world had, in a strange way, been the beginning of his true journey. He had become stronger, wiser, and more open to life's uncertainties. And as he walked hand in hand with Emily, feeling the warmth of her presence, he knew that whatever lay ahead, he was ready. Adam took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill his lungs, savoring the moment. This was a new beginning, a life untethered by hurt or betrayal, a life filled with possibility. And this time, he would be the one to write every chapter. Months passed, and Adam's new life unfolded in ways he hadn't anticipated. The past had left its mark, but it was now a faint reminder, like a scar that had healed over time, shaping him but no longer defining him. His relationship with Emily blossomed slowly, naturally, with neither of them rushing to fill any voids or seeking to erase each other's pasts. They simply existed together, two people who enjoyed each other's company, finding joy in the smallest moments. One Saturday morning, Adam and Emily drove out to the countryside to visit a charming art exhibit in a small town. They strolled through fields of wildflowers and wandered through quiet streets lined with local artists' work, laughing and taking it all in. Emily's enthusiasm was contagious. She saw beauty in the little things, and her appreciation for life's details helped Adam see the world through fresh eyes. As they walked through the gallery, they reached a painting that stopped Adam in his tracks. It was a simple scene, a path through a forest, similar to the one Emily had sketched months ago, a journey winding into unknowns, illuminated by warm light filtering through the trees. The painting stirred something deep within him, a sense of familiarity and gratitude for how far he'd come. Emily noticed his gaze, and she looked at him thoughtfully, her hand finding his. "You okay?" she asked softly. Adam nodded, his voice low. I think back to how I felt a year ago, and it's like I'm looking at a different person. I didn't think I'd find peace again, let alone happiness." Emily smiled, her eyes gentle. "Sometimes we have to walk through the dark to truly appreciate the light. You found your way out. That's something to be proud of." Her words resonated deeply, and Adam squeezed her hand, grateful for the gentle, steady presence she had become in his life. She had never tried to fix him. Instead, she had stood by him, giving him the space and time to heal. In that moment, he realized just how much he cherished her, not as a cure for his past, but as someone who made his present infinitely better. After the exhibit, they drove back to the city, but instead of going home, Adam took a detour, heading to a spot he'd never shown anyone. They reached a quiet overlook that provided a stunning view of the city below, sparkling in the evening light, the world stretching out beneath them. "This place, and it was my sanctuary," he said, parking the car and stepping out. "I used to come here after everything happened, just to think, to breathe." Emily joined him, standing quietly by his side. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice soft, as if she understood how much this place meant to him. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the sky shifted from pink to deep blue, stars slowly emerging overhead. Adam felt a deep sense of peace wash over him, a feeling he hadn't thought possible. With Emily beside him, he felt whole, not because she completed him, but because she accepted him, past and all. Breaking the silence, Emily spoke, her voice thoughtful. "You know, it's okay to feel proud of yourself. You went through something incredibly painful, and look at where you are now. You turned that pain into strength. You rebuilt your life." Her words unlocked something in him. He had been so focused on surviving, on moving forward, that he hadn't taken the time to truly acknowledge the journey. He had grown, not just past the betrayal, but into a version of himself he could genuinely be proud of. Turning to Emily, he felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice filled with emotion, "for being here, for being you." Emily smiled, her gaze warm. "I wouldn't be anywhere else." In that moment, Adam understood that he had found something real, something meaningful, that went beyond his past pain. He had discovered a love that was steady, genuine, built not on the illusions of perfection, but on mutual respect and understanding. As they stood under the vast, star-filled sky, Adam knew he was ready to embrace happiness fully, without hesitation or fear. His life was his own once again, not defined by betrayal but by resilience, by love that was chosen freely and cherished deeply. The weight of the past had finally lifted, leaving him with nothing but an open road ahead, a life he was excited to live, one moment at a time. One quiet evening, months after his journey of healing had begun, Adam received an unexpected letter. It was from Samantha. He held the envelope in his hands, his heart beating with a mix of emotions he hadn't felt in a long time. The address was familiar, but seeing her handwriting after so much time felt surreal. Part of him wanted to throw it away, to avoid reopening a chapter he had closed. But another part, the part that wanted true closure, urged him to read it. With a deep breath, Adam opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Samantha's words were raw, apologetic, filled with regret he had once longed to hear. She spoke of her mistakes, her guilt, and how much she had come to realize the depth of her betrayal. She had written about how she had lost not just a partner, but her sense of self. There was no plea for forgiveness, no request to reconnect, just an honest confession, an acknowledgement of the hurt she had caused, and the impact it had left on both of their lives. As he read, Adam felt a strange calm settle over him. The anger he'd once carried, the heartbreak and betrayal that had torn him apart, felt distant now, like a storm that had long since passed. He didn't feel triumph or satisfaction at her regret. Instead, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace. This was the final piece of the puzzle, the last step in fully letting go. Later that night, he took the letter and drove to the same quiet overlook he had shown Emily, the place that had become his sanctuary. The city lights stretched out before him, vast and glittering, a reminder of the world beyond his own experiences. Standing there with the cool breeze brushing against his skin, he took one last look at Samantha's letter, then folded it carefully and set it down on the railing. With a soft exhale, he struck a match, holding the flame close until it touched the paper. The letter caught fire, the flames slowly consuming the words that had once held such power over him. As the paper burned, he watched the embers float into the night sky, tiny sparks disappearing into the darkness. It felt like releasing the last remnants of a life he had outgrown, letting them dissolve into the universe. In that moment, Adam felt a profound release, a lightness he hadn't realized he needed. Samantha's apology, though years late, had allowed him to close this chapter completely. He could move forward now without looking back, free from any lingering shadows. As the last of the embers faded, Adam closed his eyes and let the silence of the night settle around him. He whispered a quiet goodbye, not just to Samantha, but to the part of himself that had held on to the pain for so long. The final strands of his past unraveled and drifted away, leaving him with nothing but the present, a life he was ready to live fully. He turned and walked away, knowing that he was, at last, completely free. Months after he had let go of Samantha's letter and fully closed that chapter of his life, Adam found himself in a place he never thought he'd reach: contentment. Life had taken on a vibrant, peaceful rhythm, colored by moments of joy, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of simply being present. It was as if the pain he had once carried had melted away, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the beauty in everyday moments. One afternoon, Adam and Emily decided to take a spontaneous road trip. The air was crisp, the sky an endless expanse of blue, and they drove with no particular destination in mind. Windows down, the breeze filling the car with the scent of fresh pine and wildflowers. As the miles passed, Adam felt a growing sense of freedom, a feeling that he was finally living on his own terms, without the weight of past heartbreaks holding him back. Emily glanced over, catching him in a quiet moment of reflection. "What's on your mind?" she asked with a gentle smile. Adam smiled back, his gaze drifting to the road ahead. "I just feel grateful, for everything, for you, for this moment." His voice was soft, laced with a depth of feeling he hadn't expressed in a long time. "It's strange. I never thought I'd be here, feeling this way." She reached over and intertwined her fingers with his, her grip reassuring and steady. "You deserve this, Adam. Every bit of happiness, every moment of peace. You fought for it, and you've earned it." They continued their drive, winding through scenic mountain roads and stopping occasionally to explore hidden trails or to take in the views. Each stop felt like a small celebration of his new life, a tribute to the resilience that had brought him here. As the sun began to set, casting warm hues over the landscape, they found a quiet hill overlooking a valley, a perfect spot to watch the day fade into twilight. They spread a blanket on the ground, sitting close as the sky shifted from amber to violet, stars beginning to dot the horizon. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. In that moment, Adam felt a profound sense of peace, a tranquility that reached down to his core. He looked at Emily, her face bathed in the fading light, and felt a wave of gratitude that went beyond words. She had become an integral part of his journey, not because she'd tried to erase his past, but because she'd helped him embrace his future. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Emily rested her head on his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you see for the future?" Adam thought for a moment, his mind opening to possibilities he hadn't dared imagine before. "I see happiness," he said softly, "and I see growth, together, but as individuals too. I want us to build something real, something that can last because we've both come through our own fires and come out stronger." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with understanding. "I'd like that too, to build something that's ours, free from expectations or shadows." In that quiet moment, they made a silent promise to each other, to build a life rooted in trust, resilience, and authenticity. Adam knew that this was what he had been searching for all along, not just love, but a partnership grounded in respect and shared dreams. The night deepened, and they stayed on the hill until the world around them was cloaked in starlight, talking about their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for the years to come. They laughed, reminisced, and planned, weaving a vision of a future that was both hopeful and grounded. For the first time, Adam truly believed in the life ahead of him, a life he was shaping with each choice, each moment, each breath. He had reclaimed his story, rewritten his past, and was now ready to embrace a future that he knew was his to create. As they made their way back to the car, hand in hand, Adam looked back at the darkened sky one last time, feeling a deep, steady joy. The journey had been long, painful, and filled with challenges, but it had brought him here, to a place where he could finally be himself, without fear, without regret. And as they drove back down the winding road, the stars lighting their path, Adam knew that his future was bright, limitless, and filled with promise. A life of his own making, with someone by his side who cherished him for exactly who he was. A few months after their spontaneous road trip, Adam and Emily's relationship had blossomed into something profound and steadfast, marked by a quiet, steady warmth that only grew with time. Every day they discovered new layers of each other, small quirks, dreams, and vulnerabilities that made their bond feel ever richer. They had become each other's safe place, the support they'd both longed for yet never expected to find. One evening, Emily invited Adam to her family's cabin nestled in the woods, a place she held close to her heart. She had told him stories of her summers there as a child, of bonfires and star-filled nights, of peaceful mornings surrounded by nature. She wanted him to see this part of her life, to share a place that meant so much to her, and Adam felt honored to be included in something so personal. The drive up to the cabin was quiet, winding through dense forests, the air crisp and tinged with the earthy scent of pine. Adam felt a sense of calm as they pulled up to the cozy rustic cabin, its windows glowing with the soft light of dusk. The place was simple but inviting, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to stand guard over this secluded haven. Inside, they settled in, lighting a small fire and warming up with mugs of hot cocoa. Emily curled up beside him, resting her head on his shoulder as they watched the flames dance, the crackling warmth wrapping them in a shared silence that spoke volumes. After a while, Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a vulnerable softness. "I want you to know how much you mean to me, Adam," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been through so much, yet you've become someone so strong, so full of love. I feel incredibly lucky to be a part of your life." Her words touched something deep within him, and he felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent so much of his journey healing, reclaiming his identity, and learning to let go of the past. But in that moment, he realized just how much he had found. Not just peace, but a love that felt grounding, real, and unshakable. Reaching for her hand, he took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "Emily, You've given me more than you know. You were there when I was still figuring out who I was, when I was still piecing myself back together. You never tried to fix me, you just accepted me. And because of that, I feel like I can be my true self with you." She squeezed his hand, a small smile playing on her lips. "That's all I've ever wanted." They stepped outside into the cool night air, the sky a tapestry of stars shimmering above them. Adam had always found solace in the vastness of the night sky, a reminder of the bigger picture, of life beyond the narrow pane he once knew. But standing there with Emily, he felt a different kind of peace, a grounded, beautiful feeling of belonging. They walked a little way from the cabin, down a path that led to a small clearing surrounded by trees. Emily slipped her hand in his, guiding him to a spot she remembered from her childhood. They settled on a fallen log, wrapped in blankets against the chill, watching the stars reflect off a nearby lake. The silence between them was full of warmth, an unspoken understanding that this moment held something timeless. After a while, Adam spoke, his voice carrying a depth of emotion he had rarely shared. "There was a time I didn't think I'd ever be able to trust or love again, but with you it's different. I don't feel afraid. I feel whole." Emily looked at him, her eyes shining in the moonlight, and for a moment she said nothing. Instead, she leaned in, placing a gentle kiss on his lips, a touch that was both tender and profound. It was a kiss that held promises, a quiet acknowledgement of the love that had grown between them, unhurried and genuine. Pulling back slightly, she whispered, "You don't have to say anything, just know that I'm here, for as long as you want me to be." Adam felt his heart swell, a deep warmth radiating through him. In that moment, he knew that what they shared was something rare, a love that had grown out of patience, respect, and unwavering support. He realized that he wasn't just moving forward, he was building a future, one that was free from past shadows, filled with the light of someone who saw him for who he truly was. As they sat together under the vast sky, Adam felt the last pieces of his past finally fall away. He had reached the end of his journey of healing and self-discovery, not because he had found someone new to fill the empty spaces, but because he had found himself again. And with Emily by his side, he felt ready to embrace whatever life had in store. They stayed out there for hours, talking and laughing, sharing dreams and secrets under the stars, their voices mingling with the soft whispers of the forest. And in the quiet of that starlit night, Adam knew that his heart had truly, completely healed. He had let go, moved on, and found love again, a love that was built on everything he had learned, everything he had endured, and everything he had become. This was his new beginning, a life redefined not by the pain of the past, but by the beauty of the present and the promise of the future. And with Emily's hand in his, Adam knew that he was finally completely home.